What's good, YouTube? This is my deck profile after going 3-0 at locals today in One Piece. I was here piloting Mono Green Kid. So let's just get started. The actual leader card himself, 5 loss or 5 life, 5k power. This guy's pretty good. If you tap 3 Don, you can basically just have him restand and he could just swing again. Really strong late game. When they start really clearing your board and he's the only guy left, if your opponent only has 1 life remaining, you can just swing twice with this guy for 12k. You put 7 on Kid, and then you just use the extra 3 to restand him and then go again. Very useful, especially if you're able to get the blockers out of the way. And even if you have to rest someone beforehand, you know, he's still a pretty beefy guy, so like he could just swing over stuff. Really strong leader ability, especially in the metagame that it is right now. Pretty good. So just starting off with the actual deck itself. What we got here is we got 4 Jewelry Bonnie and we got 2 Momonosuke. The reason that you play these guys is because they're both 1 cost and you tap them, rest an extra Don. So you basically play, rest, it's like 2 Don. But what you do is you look at the top 5 cards. Bonnie finds you a Supernova and you can add a Supernova card to your hand. You just put the others in the bottom, tuck them down. And then Momonosuke lets you find a Wano character doing the same thing. You just top 5, get your Wano character, put them back. Both of them are really important for consistency. You gotta make sure you see them. Typically speaking, if I feel like I can't protect them, I might just opt to not use them and instead like just put more bodies on the board. Reason being is I feel like if you're committing if you're committing a Don to play the Bonnie or the Momonosuke, and then you tap them, you just leave them vulnerable to like replace themselves, I don't really think that's worth it. I think if you're able to set up a board with like one of these guys, one of the blockers, like early on, then what you can do from there is you can actually go +1 on the Bonnie or the Momonosuke. So I think if you can set up a scenario where you can find multiple cards off of them, that would be ideal. Momonosuke, I think you might want to just shotgun regardless of whether or not you can protect him, because there are fewer Wano card targets in the deck and they're really important to see in the early game, especially Okiku, but I'll get to that later. But the reason 4 and 2 is because Bonnie is able to search stuff throughout the entire duration of the game. Early game, mid game, late game. There's always things you want to be finding off of Bonnie. It's always useful, always good. Momonosuke, once you start entering mid-late game, the Wano cards that you're finding are much less impactful. There is one that you might want to be finding, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Other than those guys, I already kind of mentioned them, but we're playing 4 beige, 4 killer. They're just small blockers, low cost. You obviously need to have these guys so that you just don't die and you can make it to the late game so you can swing with your larger bodies. Obviously, Capone is cheaper. It's going to be way more convenient to find Capones than it is to be finding killers, but there's not really a better option than killer at the moment. So he's also a 1k counter, so pretty useful. His other ability to attach a Don and then draw a card on block, it's a really niche ability in my opinion. It feels really like win more. Like if you're already in a really advantageous position and you can afford to do that, it just kind of puts you further ahead. But personally, when I play with him, I find that I prefer using the extra Don on something else, like whether or not it might just be powering someone else up so that I can avoid certain blocker combinations better, or like I might just want to use it to like play other cards. Not really something that comes up that often, but I mean it's there if you need it, and he's a 1k blocker, so I mean pretty good. I'm just gonna really quickly go over these guys. You don't play these guys for real. You don't actually play them. They're just 2k counter, so that's it. Like literally the defense aspect of these guys is all you play them for. I didn't play Beppo at all today. Didn't play Apu at all today. I did consider playing Apu. Beppo in the context of this deck is useless because you don't have any Heart Pirates that are 4 cost or lower. So literally you only play him for the 2 cost counter. I could maybe see a scenario where you play him just so that you have a body on curve and then you can attach a Don so that he can swing at leader or something. But like, I feel like he's pretty much always going to be more useful like just as the counter. In terms of Apu, there is like a kind of a cool ability on him where you just rest an opponent's Don card. So if you're afraid of like playing Kaido and you're like like, oh, is there going to be like Thunder Bagua, or they leave one on like red, and you're like, is there going to be a guard point or something? You know, you can disrupt it with a poo. The only problem is that it's going to be telegraphed because it's not like a poo has rush or anything. So it's like technically the opponent could play around it. It's kind of like mediocre. It's like 2 costs 3k. It's like there's I'd rather just use them for the counter whenever possible. Next up, we have the entire Wano crew. So what we got over here is I'm playing 3 Nekomamushi. This card is extremely good to see early mid game. In the late game, if they start like throwing down small blockers, he's useful. He's good. I play 3 of them. I don't like playing 4. I feel like Nekomamushi doesn't win you games. He enables your cards that are winning you the game to win the game. So he's kind of like, I don't want to play 4 of them, but I mean, he's pretty good otherwise. I do play 4 Izo. It's kind of the same deal with Nekomamushi. It is a 1 cost higher and it's for the same power, but the difference with Izo, the reason I play 4 is because Izo's a 2k counter. So sometimes I will play the Izo and sometimes I will keep it in the hand just for, because I mean the utility of this card is like really strong all around. It also rests things that are 4 or less, as opposed to Nekomamushi only resting things that are 3 or less. But personally, like, I don't really think that there's a huge difference in their versatility or in terms of like what they can rest. I think that Izo, like, kind of most of the things that I want to rest are not 4 cost cards. Like, most of them are 3 below, so it's like it doesn't really matter too much. And then the next card that we have, we're playing 4 Okiku. She's just insanely broken. This card is the reason why, if you're like turn 2 and you have like 2 Don, like playing Momonosuke and using the effect just to see if you can find an Okiku for next turn, it's like beyond worth it, I think, personally. Okiku's like insane. So she's a 3 cost 5k attacker, which is good enough because that hits leader just instantly. And when you have a don't attach, you can rest an opponent's character with 5 costs or less. This is crazy. This card is like, it stops cards like Queen and Purple Kaido. It's like crazy. Like any blocker that's not, just absolutely like chonked out. Even even Law, like it stops Law, it stops Queen, like those cards. Really crazy. It's so good. And if there's just a threat in general, like not even a blocker, that you want to get rid of, you can swing at leader with Okiku, rest them, and then hit the thing that you rest with the leader. And it's just like, bro, like, this card is cracked. If you see this card early on, it's hard to lose. Like, she's crazy. Very strong card. In tandem with the Wano package, though, we're just resting tons of guys constantly, which is why I personally, I'm a little light on this. I'm playing 2 Drake and 2 Killer. So when you play these guys on play, Drake will kill things that are 4 or less, and Killer will kill things that are 3 or less that are rested. They're not the craziest I've found, but they're good enough to where it's worth playing for sure. Killer is really good at just like getting rid of threats that you don't want to see. He's also specifically really good at getting cards like Bonnie, Momonosuke, etc., cards that like tap, search, and very good. He also has this trigger effect to like KO stuff, so like, I mean, sometimes that comes up, especially in my deck because I'm only playing 2 Killer. It's like pretty rare. I play significantly less of these guys than like the Wano guys, because resting stuff is like more universally applicable. I find that these effects are a little more situational. Drake, I personally really don't like seeing, because there's just other 5 cost cards in this deck that I'd much rather play like the majority of the time. But obviously he combos well with things like Nekomamushi and Izo. So I mean, you play Drake. He's also just a 6k body, which is like just pretty good in its own right. Like, you just add 1, and then they need more than a 2k blocker or a 2k counter in order to stop his attack, like on leader. Pretty good, and they're also both 1k counters. So I mean, it's not like they're dead draws, even if like you can't find a use for them, because like you probably can, but they're pretty good. Next up, these guys are just kind of like miscellaneous 5 costs that I think are really strong. So obviously we're playing the Blocker Law. This card is like really insane. He's, first of all, blocker, and the on play effect is really crazy, because if there's multiple rested guys on the opponent's field, you could go Killer, play Law, put Killer back, play Killer again, and you can KO 2 rested 3 costs or less Really crazy. Or if you want, you could do it with Izo or Nekomamushi, and you could like play them, rest, law, put them black, play them again, rest again. He just like is really strong at getting double value out of a lot of cards. Other than that, he's like a 5 cost, 6k body, pretty good. I mean, I've attacked with him before just because it's worth it sometimes, just because the 6k, the stat line is like pretty strong. So definitely really versatile card in this deck. The reason I'm not playing 4 of them though is because it was kind of like how I was talking about. Who was it? I was talking about well, it was kind of like how I was talking about Killer and Drake in a sense. Like, they don't necessarily win you the game. They, like, enable you to win the game. Or these guys might, like, kill something that might, like, be really significant. And, like, Law doesn't do anything, like, on his own. Like, if you have an empty board and you just play Law, like, he's just a blocker. Like, it's kind of whatever. So in order to get like the maximum value out of this card, you kind of need something already established on board. So I'm not like prioritizing finding Law. It's more like if I can get to Law like on curve and he just shows up and like I already have something established, like he just makes it like he just starts like checkmating the opponent, you know? It's not like he wins the game on its own. So it's like I'm not looking for Law, but when Law shows up, it makes things way easier. The other 5 costs, we got 2 Basil Hawkins. This guy's really strong. Another 5 cost, 6k. Basically, when you attach a Dawn on him and he attacks an opponent's character, not the leader, just the character, he can freestand and then he can swing again, or, you know, he's just not able to be targeted for attacks if you just leave him active. He's really strong for board clear. When they have a lot of blockers and you're just, like, attacking, they kind of have to... It feels really bad for the opponent to try and stop the Basil Hawkins from attacking because he just freestands and does it again, right? So it's really convenient because as opposed to having like 2 guys on the board, if you like attach Dawn to both of them, you're kind of wasting extra Dawn using like 2 cards. But if you just have the 1 Basil Hawkins with like 4 Dawn, he's 10k and he just swings twice for 10k. It's like crazy. Really strong value out of this card. He's not a blocker, so he doesn't have a counter. So it's a little awkward when you pull like multiple of him in your hands, but I mean, he's really strong utility, so I think he's worth playing. I would have played a 3rd one, but I specifically opted to play the one of Yamato. The reason I want to play Yamato specifically is because of decks like Blue and Purple Kaido specifically. Purple Kaido, I think, is probably this deck's hardest matchup in my personal experience playing. And just letting Kaido get the card advantage off of their life is so brutal that I just decided that it's worth playing the one of Yamato just because they have to deal with this. So, like, if I have a board with, like, Okiku and Yamato on at the same time, they are going to Barack Obama the Yamato because this thing is so threatening. They have to prioritize, like, dealing with this, and it just makes it really difficult. And so, because, you know, when you play against Kaido, if you go to the late game, like, you lose. Like, you don't win. You got to win, like, fast because they will, like, win the long game versus you. And so Yamato really threatens, like, a really aggressive stance for you. So when they have to deal with the Yamato, you can just try to win with the rest of your cards. So that's why I play the one of Yamato, searchable off Momonosuke. This is, like, the one card in late game that I might try to find, but if you find the Yamato too late, it's still not great, so it's hard for me to justify bumping up Momonosuke more. And like I said, it's very matchup specific when you want to see this Yamato. So, I mean, I only have the one over at the moment, but I mean, it came up today. I did play Purple Kaido, I opened Yamato, and they had the Barack Obama this instead of my Okiku, and it made the difference, so. Next up, we got the huge boys. We got 2 7-cost kid, and we got 2 8-cost kid. I definitely think that these guys are both really strong in their own right. They're both really good. Like, it's hard for me to say that I want more, but they also don't have counter, so it's hard to say I want to play more than 4 of the big boys. This kid is a 7-cost, and if you attach a Don on him, then at the end of the turn he just restands, so he can attack and then block, right? So he's aggro and defensive. He's really strong at that. The reason why I think that he's more useful than the 8-cost kid is actually because the 8-cost kid is even more powerful when he goes off, because if you have a Don attached to him and he's tapped, then what you can do with this guy is he just basically forces the opponent to always target him as the attack. And so like it's just really difficult for a lot of decks to get over. Like Purple Kaido has to like burn like Purple Kaido has to like either go 10 drop Kaido, which like doesn't always feel good for them, or like they have to like attach like a ton of Don to this guy, and then it's just like, you know, it's harder for them to get over the rest of your board if this guy is like always going to be at the front gate. The reason though that I don't necessarily think one is better over the other is because the cost of this 8-drop kid is crazy. So he can tap himself to play another guy from hand. So like if you have this guy in Capone, like bro, that's GG. That setup's insane. But the problem is that because you need the Don attached to him in order to do the effect where he redirects all the attacks to himself, it's like this huge conundrum where you're effectively, if you want to play this guy like on curve and then use his ability, you need 9 Don. He's like he's an 8 cost card, but he's effectively a 9 cost. And so it's like it's really difficult to make that decision, because like with this kid, what you can do is you can play him, and then you could play like a Nekomamushi or an Izo to get rid of a blocker, and then you could deal with it with your leader. Or you could even go just the 7 cost kid and then poke twice with the leader using the extra 3 Don. And so that's like really strong. And so like it really depends, right? Like if you need to win in terms of like advantage, efficiency, you know, you need to like be able to play very efficiently, the 7 cost kid is like clearly the superior option. But if you need something that's really potent, like you need something that's really high ceiling that just makes it really impossible for the opponent to deal with, then like this kid is obviously the better choice, right? And so depending on the matchup and depending on how the flow of the game is going with a Bonnie, if I end up seeing both of these in the search, you know, I might choose one or the over the other. It's hard to say, because like when you see multiple of these, like it's not that great. The best thing that they're used for, especially because I don't know what it is, maybe it's my luck, but I do feel like I draw a lot of these guys like very frequently, along with the 5 cost law. And obviously they're all really good cards and I like seeing them, and they win me games. They've won me games today. But a lot of times I just use them as like the trash fodder discard for the leader law, or for the leader kid. So, you know, they're really good. I wouldn't like say that they're super insane, but obviously they're necessary for you to win the late game. Like they put the pressure, they apply the pressure, and they have the defense. So really strong, versatile cards. A little overrated in my opinion, I think, compared to like how some people talk about them, but they're definitely really strong in their own scenarios. So really good to see there. To round out the deck, we just got 3 event cards. I have 2 Paradise Waterfall, 1 Punk Gibson. The reason being, Punk Gibson is, I just don't like keeping 2 Don around just to have the Punk Gibson live. But I mean, sometimes it's honestly like pretty useful to have, because especially with the 8 cost kid, if I can protect this thing at all, by all means necessary, like if this thing made it to like another turn and I have the Don to play Punk Gibson, and I just like block, usually, right, like if they have like a big guy, even like 7k, you know, they try to overpower him to deal with the counters that might be available in your hand. And if it's just physically impossible for them to get over because of a card like Punk Gibson, then like their turn just ends, you know. They have to overcommit so that they can guarantee this thing leaves the field, because if they don't, their turn's over and like they just lose so much tempo. So it's really important to have this just to threaten it, right? Like just to prove that like you have the card, you know. It's really strong. Situational, but really strong. That's why you just play the one of, but it comes up for sure. You just don't want to have multiple, because it's not something you want to necessarily be seeing all the time. It's just something you want to threaten mostly. The Paradise Waterfall, this card's also really good, especially if you have a blocker. So if you have like the 7 cost kid, this is another thing you can do with this card, is if you have like 10, if you have like 8, you can play the kid, he can block, and then you can Paradise Waterfall. So if they try to like kill the kid with like a 7k, you Paradise Waterfall, and then you can restand the kid, and then he can block again, right? Really strong. You can do this with other stuff too. Like if you don't necessarily care about the kid dying, but you do care that like you have like a Bonnie or something that's rested at the moment and you need that thing to get back up, you can block with the kid, Paradise Waterfall, and then restand like the Bonnie or the Hawkins or whatever you have, and then that will make it so that they can't be attacked again that turn. So I mean, the Paradise Waterfall, definitely really useful. Very nice. It also has this trigger effect that KOs things with like a cost of 4 or less, which like that comes up, it's useful, it's nice. But yeah, that is the deck. Uh, won locals with it, pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with how I played. Pretty satisfied with the deck itself. I can't really think of anything in particular that I would want to do to change the deck. Like maybe I could like swap out Yamato and then add like another Momonosuke if I'm not afraid of Purple Kaido. But I felt like my local had like a pretty decent showing for Purple Kaido, so I was like, I'll put the Yamato in. Which I mean, I did play against Purple Kaido as the last match, so definitely the correct choice to keep that in there. I did see builds of like Green Kid with like Shachi Penguin. I just don't think it's consistent enough. I don't want to play a deck like that where it's like so inconsistent. Today, the one thing I might think about bumping up maybe is Nekomamushi because he put in a lot of work today, but I feel like it was the perfect amount. So I mean, it's not like I was missing him at any point. I was seeing him enough as it was. So, but yeah, here's my tournament pack. The winner pack. I haven't opened it yet, so quick unpacking. Let's see what we get. God, these like single card packs are like so scary to open for me. I'm just gonna, cause like I don't want to like I don't want to bend the card. I don't want to like damage the card because I'm like trying to unpack a single. It's more comfortable when there's like multiple cards in the pack because then it's just like I feel safer to like, All right. Oh, yo, that is a boy right there. Got the Kaido. What does this even do? End the turn, add one Dome card from the deck instead as active. Is that even good? This is an 8 cost. 9k body though. That's naturally being a 9k body is kind of insane. So actually maybe this could be useful and it's like I don't know. I guess because like if you have this, right, you can use the leader ability and you can just if you have this and Onigashima, you're like effectively getting 4 Don a turn. Yo, wait, that is crazy because if you're at 10 and you get 4, you banish 7, you hit, and then next turn you just banish again with the leader Kaido. That's kind of maybe that's it's a little cheeky, but I think that could be pretty all right. Cool card. This is the card I got for the entry today. Pretty nice. Last week I think I got like the blue law card. But yeah, that was my deck profile. Thanks guys for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, I guess. Whatever. I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. See ya.